Greetings everyone, I'm Triet, a researcher from Croft at the University of Adelaide. Welcome to the presentation of our paper, A Large-Scale Study of Security Vulnerability Support on Developer Question-Answer Websites, accepted in East 2021. This work is authored by me, Roland, Croft, David Hinn, and Professor Ali Babar, and also partially funded by the Cybersecurity CRC. In this work, we conduct an empirical study of posts about software vulnerabilities to understand the ongoing discussions, their characteristics, and the given support on Q&A sites. Nowadays, many open-source threat intelligence databases provide information definition about software vulnerabilities and secure coding practices to prevent future security threats. The good thing about these sources is that the information has been verified by security experts. On the downside, these sources do not provide any interactive platform for developers to discuss the reported vulnerabilities, especially the issues about understanding such vulnerabilities as well as implementing and using the mitigation strategies in real-world scenarios. For example, CWE, or Common Weakness Enumeration, recommends to use except known good input validation strategy for preventing SQL injection. However, as the developer is not clear how to implement such a strategy in a language of interest. And these needs have led to the emergence of developer question-answer websites like Stack Overflow, Security Stack Exchange, where the knowledge can be shared much faster through crowdsourcing with millions of users and developers on a daily basis. Here's an example post on Stack Overflow recommending and explaining various libraries and functions for mitigating SQL injection in PHP. We utilize different parts of these posts for our analysis later on. Instead of focusing on experts' information on formal security sources as in the current literature, this work explores practical vulnerability-related concerns shared by developers on question-answer websites. Specifically, we aim to conduct a large-scale empirical study on vulnerability discussion from two large question-answer sites, namely Stack Overflow and Security Stack Exchange. To first, identify the vulnerability-related issues commonly faced by developers in practice. Secondly, we'd like to know how each question-answer website is supporting these vulnerabilities discussions. In other words, to which extent each Q&A site is a suitable place for discussing vulnerabilities. To achieve our aims, we set out to answer 4 related research questions. In research question 1, we study the key real-world vulnerability-related concerns that developers usually encounter and discuss on question-answer sites. Based on the identified concerns, in research question 2, we explore the popular and difficult topics. The trade-off between popularity and difficulty help practitioners to choose the suitable site to ask and answer vulnerability questions. In the third research question, we investigate the level of expertise to see whether there's a lack of knowledge in any topic requiring more support from experienced users. In the last research question, we provide a complete picture of Q&A site support for vulnerability discussions. We give insight into the solution types typically provided by experienced users. In this work, we develop heuristics to collect one of the largest datasets of vulnerability discussions on Q&A sites, starting with tag-based heuristics. Because it's not trivial to manually identify all the vulnerability-related tags, we use the entries from CWE and part-of-speech tagging to identify the meaningful n-grams used to describe vulnerabilities. We then search for the tags on Stack Overflow, Security Stack Exchange, matching these n-grams. After that, we retrieve an initial set tag containing at least one of these selected tags. Besides tag-based heuristics, we also prepared 643 vulnerability keywords to customize the content-based heuristic used in recent studies for the vulnerability domain. Content-based heuristics help us to refine our set tag and identify any missing vulnerability discussions that do not have any vulnerability tags in the remaining post. Intuitively, we want to make sure the vulnerability words in the post are prevalent with keyword ratio and at the same time diverse enough with keyword count. Using different content-based thresholds, we first refine our set tag and then obtain the set content from the remaining post, and finally combine these two sets to develop the golden vulnerability dataset for answering our research questions. Now I move on to answer each research question, in which I first describe the methodology and then discuss the main findings. In research question 1, we used a popular topic modeling technique called latent Dirichlet allocation, aka LDA, to identify the hidden themes of vulnerability discussions on Q&A sites. First, we extracted the text from all the posts to train the LDA model. As recommended in recent studies, we also tuned the performance of LDA by rerunning the data modeling process multiple times with different hyperparameters such as the number of topics. After the tuning process, we semi-automatically obtained the optimal model with the highest coherence metrics and with the most interpretable topics based on our manual validation. Then we selected the top 20 most relevant keywords and top 15 most relevant posts to label each topic. Finally, we extracted the common discussion patterns for each topic. Please refer to our paper for more detailed discussion. We also used the formula proposed by Babar et al. To determine the topic proportion and their trend over time on Stack Overflow and Security Stack Exchange. With LDA, we identified 13 vulnerability topics. Some of them you may have heard of, like SQL injection or cross-site scripting. I will not go into details of these topics here. Please refer to our paper for such information. Among these topics, memory allocation and vulnerability theory are the most prevalent ones on Stack Overflow and Security Stack Exchange respectively. Moreover, malware, cross-site, request forgery, and synchronization errors are on the rise recently, whereas vulnerability theory is decreasing on both of the sides. Interestingly, we also observed several mismatches between question and answer site and formal security sources in terms of the top frequent vulnerability types like the CSRF. One potential reason we found for such discrepancies is that developers are struggling quite a lot with understanding and implementing the well-known mitigation strategies for these types of vulnerabilities. These findings ask for better tools not only for the top vulnerabilities on formal security sources, but also for the ones discussed on Q&A sites that developers are having increasing difficulty with in practice. Moving on to research question 2, we identify the popularity and difficulty of the 13 vulnerability topics. We used 4 well-known metrics to quantify the popularity and 3 metrics to measure the difficulty. Intuitively, a popular topic would have a lot of engagement from the community, like with more views, favorites, comments, and upvotes. On the other hand, difficult topics would likely to be unanswered or take longer time to receive answers or accepted answers. After computing the popularity and difficulty metrics, we also compute the site-wide and topic-wise correlations between them. Among the topics, brute force timing attacks is the most popular, while vulnerability scanning tools is the most difficult overall. There are some topics that are less difficult on one side than the other. Take network attacks for example. It's not only less difficult, but also more popular on Security Stack Exchange. For these topics, it's better to prefer one side to another to obtain more timely answers. However, we didn't observe any significant correlation between topic popularity and difficulty. Here, we want to emphasize that vulnerability scanning tools would require more detailed documentation from tool maintainers and performance comparison from researchers to help less experienced developers to decide the right tool to use among a lot of available ones in different scenarios. In research question 3, we want to understand the role of users' expertise in answering vulnerability questions. Here, experts refer to the users who usually make useful contributions. First, we use reputation to quantify the general expertise, as reputation is achieved through appreciation and acceptance from the community, like getting upvoted questions, accepted answers, added, and awarded bounties. However, reputation isn't specific to any topic in the vulnerability domain. Thus, to compute the specific expertise level, we first obtain all the users' answers in this domain. Then, based on their et al.'s assumption that user content reflects their knowledge, we use the LDA output to approximate a user vulnerability expertise. We also computed the topic distribution of the questions and finally calculated the correlation between these two distributions to find out what vulnerability expertise that answerers of each topic usually have. For the general expertise, the reputation of the vulnerability domain is higher than that of other domains, such as big data, machine learning, or deep learning. However, the number of same users getting accepted answers on both sides is still low, implying limited cross-site knowledge sharing. We also confirmed statistically that difficult topics like vulnerability scanning tools do not attract much attention from experienced users, reassuring the need for more future support. Next is the specific expertise. Vulnerability theory is the most common vulnerability knowledge possessed by the answerers on the two sides. This is probably because many users know the basics of vulnerabilities, such as their definitions and differences. Furthermore, it's more likely to get same topic answers who are more familiar with the topic of your questions on Stack Overflow as compared to Security Stack Exchange, as shown with the darker diagonal on the left heat map, which suggests that future work should develop tools to find experts from multiple sites and preferably within the same topic of the questions to provide more timely and relevant answers. So far, we have learned about the percentage of getting accepted answers and the expertise of users who gave such answers. In research question 4, we complete the big picture by investigating what types of solutions have been given in these answers. We need to manually extract the solution types from the accepted answers, as two instances of the same solution type may not share any similar words, such as the code to mitigate SQL injection in different languages, thus making LDA unusable here. We selected 385 posts to ensure the size significance and applied stratification to ensure topic proportions were maintained. Then, two authors open-coded 30% of the selected posts to identify the initial codes. To ensure the consistencies and interpretability of the codes, we discussed and merged similar codes into higher-level ones, such as combining SQL injection mitigations in different languages into one. Finally, the two authors labeled the remaining 70% of the post based on the identified solution types. After the manual labeling process, we identified 7 key solution types provided for vulnerability questions. Specifically, action to take and external sources are the most commonly used ones on Stack Overflow and Security Stack Exchange respectively. Overall answers on Stack Overflow usually provide more technical details like step-by-step instructions or code snippets, while users on Security Stack Exchange more often leverage their experience to answer questions. Finally, we found that 8 out of 13 topics have different top solutions between the two sites. These findings suggest that each site may provide different solution types to the same question. Hence, future work can develop techniques to search for solution types across sites to provide more options to the users depending on their needs. In conclusion, we have conducted a large-scale empirical study on more than 70,000 vulnerability posts on Stack Overflow and Security Stack Exchange and found 13 key discussion topics along with their popularity and difficulty. Among these topics, the difficult ones seem to lack attention from experienced users. 7 main solution types have also been identified, in which Stack Overflow provides more technical solutions and Security Stack Exchange has more experience sharing. In short, each Q&A site does support vulnerability discussions, yet with varying extent for different topics, which can be integrated to enhance the tools and understand the practices in this domain. In the future, our findings can be extended with data from more Q&A sites and also correlated with the vulnerability fixing and detection activities in version control systems like GitHub. You can now scan this QR code to read the preprint of our paper and also visit the GitHub link for data and code. Thank you very much for your listening. If you have any questions or suggestions, please feel free to drop us an email to discuss it further. Stay safe and keep your software safe.